It's time for Sports Xtra Extra.
Rolling Along, an American Story. It's a one-man show performed on a stage about life. Senator Bill Bradley's life. And the New York Knicks legend joins us now. Senator Bradley, welcome to Sports Xtra. How are you?
Thank you, Tina. It's so good to be here and being with you.
So this is just an incredible story told by you, and it's a performance autobiography. What inspired you to have this kind of a format to tell your life story?
Well, you know, I gave my political papers to Princeton, and they did an oral history. They interviewed 60 people who had something to do with me in politics over the years. And I invited all 60 to a reception. 40 came. I stood up and told stories about each one of the 40. One of them was a guy named Manny Eisenberg, who was a Broadway producer, 72 shows he produced. Old friend, 50 years. He comes up to me after and says, sounds a little bit like Hal Holbrook. You doing Mark Twain. You ought to work something up. So for the next year, I wrote it. And then I took it on the road to 20 cities and workshopped it. Do it with 15 people or 20 or wherever in, Austin, Texas, Chicago, Marin County, California. And took notes of what they said. And then I said, okay, good, I'm ready to go. Well, you got to memorize it. Memorize it. So I walked around Central Park memorized it. And I then was going to do it, and then COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, I'm stuck in New York. And afterwards, I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the show for 4 or 5 nights and have 5 cameras and make it into a film. And this is this film.
Fantastic. So, and it was filmed right here in New York City.
Yes, it was.
And what was Knicks superfan Spike Lee's involvement when he got word of this?
Well, you know, Tina, it's really interesting because there were angels all along the way that showed up. I mean, Manny Eisenberg is the first one who suggested this, right? But then I did it once in the commissary of the Warner Brothers lot in California. And a guy named Mike Tolan walks up, and he did The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, right? And he said, you know, this could be a film. Oh, okay. And then Spike, who's my old friend, I told him I've done this. And he said, well, come on over to Brooklyn and do it for me. So I went over to Brooklyn, and he said, what do you need? And I said, how about a glass of water and a stool? And he gives it to me, and I do the 90 minutes. It was in about hour and 45, but I do the 90 minutes. And at the end, he has tears. And so I said, something connected. So, you know, once you memorize it, you got to stay sharp. You know, and when you practice, you got to practice every day. You can't
Same
skip
as the game.
So every day at 3:30 in the rec room of our apartment building, I did the show. And if 2 people got it, so it got around. So 2 people showed, 10 people showed, 8 people showed. I still do it every day at 3:30.
And you perfected it.
And honed it. And then one day a guy walks in, and he was named Frank Oz. Who did all the Muppets and all the Jim Henson movies. And he said, gee, I really want to help you. So he was another angel. So all these angels, and the final angel came 2 weeks before the Tribeca Film Festival. I was excited. I opened the show with a song from Van Morrison. And 2 weeks before Tribeca, his agent called and said, we don't give you permission to use that song anymore. So what do I do? I call my friend, Steve Van Zandt of the East Street Band, who had seen the show 6 months earlier. I sent him a tape. I said, Steve, I need a show.
I was your senator once.
Right. I was your senator. I need a song. And he said, well, Bruce wrote a song in the 80s called Summer at Signal Hill. Try it, see if it works. I tried it. It did work. It was perfect for it. And that's the opening of the show now. And all of these angels came along over time.
And of course, everyone could see it now on HBO Max. I want to delve into some of the topics and see how they all correlate from your life growing up in Crystal City, Missouri, going to college at Princeton, playing for the New York Knicks, and becoming a U.S. Senator. And you were born in Crystal City. You mentioned it in that little clip, where your parents did not want you to become a basketball player or a politician. Why?
Well, I think they were traditional and had an idea of you. My father was a local banker. I thought, yeah, I'd go into the local bank or become a lawyer or whatever. And they they didn't think about politics or they didn't think about basketball for sure, but that's where my passions were. And of course, they supported me if I head in that direction.
You started playing basketball as a little boy, but by being on different sports teams, that's where you were unfortunately exposed to racism, to some of your teammates. How did those experiences as a little boy in sports, ironically, impact you later into getting into government and politics?
Well, I remember our Little League baseball team, integrated, played in Joplin, Missouri in the sectional finals, and we had to stay in a flea bag hotel because it was the only hotel that would accept our African-American teammates, and the team stayed together. So I was aware of it from the very early years of my life. And then, of course, with the Knicks, I had a chance to see America through the eyes of my teammates. And that was a remarkable chance or experience for me. They gave so much more to me than I gave to them. I mean, you know, there are all kinds of stories which I tell. I mean, to give you an example, Dick Barnett tells a story of his all-black Tennessee State team winning the small college championship, coming back to Nashville, and going directly to a lunch counter sit-in downtown, and having to have the discipline not to respond when white people spit on him because he was protesting segregated restaurants. So these stories of people's lives touch me deeply, and right now, you know, you think about, you know, we're all, the bond is inseparable. And, you know, when we get together, it's always a very special thing because we shared the mountaintop together, and we knew that the only reason we got to the mountaintop was because we were unselfish.
And that leads me to my next question, because you said what you loved about the game of basketball was the pass that led to the pass, that led to the pass, that led to the score eventually. How did that philosophy, where did it come from, and how did that identify you as a player and a man?
Well, I think unselfishness is the key. I mean, you know, I always say if you want to watch a basketball game and look at a team, count how many passes they make after you cross half court. If they make less than two, or two or less, then they're not unselfish. And you know, this has such wider implications. I mean, for example, we live in a country where there's real division, right? And yet, you know, the country could learn a lot from what made our Knicks team successful so many years ago. I mean, take responsibility for yourself, respect your fellow human being, disagree with them openly and honestly and civilly, enjoy their humanity, and what my grandmother always used to say, never look down on people you don't understand.
And you say that towards the end of the film. As you described your great Knicks championship teams, do you see any glimmers or similarities in this current Knicks team that is playing so well right now?
Actually, I do, not in a player-by-player, but the real question is, I remember when Cassie Russell broke his ankle, they moved me to forward. Dave DeBusschere had just come. The starting five gelled, and we had a very strong run. We lost to Boston in the playoffs, but we knew the next year was going to be our year because we had gelled. And it happens, like this January, 13-2, right? That's a good year.
Years. Best month in 20 years,
okay,
yeah.
but what goes on from that? And if that can continue for the rest of the year, then you're going to find that people begin to believe in themselves in a way that they don't now. And when they begin to believe in themselves, anything's possible. And the key to that is unselfishness, I believe. I mean, you know, what is basketball? It's a game of maximum movement of player and ball, and the reward's unselfishness. And every champion knows that.
Yeah, the champions know that because what took them to become champions. And I think of your teammates, you're still close with Clyde Frazier and Earl Monroe. What was last year like for you when you lost Willis Reed?
Well, when Gail called me and his wife and told me that he'd passed, I sat down and cried. I got a call. I was walking through Central Park, and I sat down on a rock and cried. And he was a wonderful human being, and he put himself on the line for his team when he came and played in the 7th game of the famous 1970 championships. And he was a friend of mine, for my whole life. And always, if I needed him to come to a political event, oh yeah, he'll be there, no problem. And he was a rock. And I'll tell you one Willis Reed story. My rookie year, he only called me by my last name, right? Well, that bothered me.
Just Bradley.
So I stopped him in the airport one day and said, Willis, you're calling everybody else on the team by their first name. How about calling me by my first name? You're calling me by my last name. And he paused and looks down at me, 6'9", 240, big Willis Reed smile on his face and says, okay, Bradley.
He's stuck with it.
In other words, I'm boss here.
It's interesting because, of course, you went on to become a U.S. Senator in New Jersey for 22 years, presidential candidate, ran for the presidency. And we see so many athletes, especially in the NBA, getting involved in social issues, different social justices, equality. But I've noticed, though, their post-careers go more into being corporate leaders versus political leaders. Is there a shift, or do you see potential in players these days that could become politicians? What's your take on all of that?
Well, sure. I mean, when I was in the Senate, Jack Kemp was in the House, and Tom McMillan was also in the House. So athletes, like lawyers or business people or whomever, they can make a contribution to public life if they are so inclined and sufficiently, and I use the word again, selfless, to give themselves to the people they represent and give them the best that they can give.
You mentioned in the film how you remember when the crowds turned on you, specifically your rookie year when they booed you. But then you were able to apply that experience to politics and different runs for office. How did that correlate and help you then?
Well, we're all the product of our life experience. And I had a searing experience in my rookie year. I was miscast. I was a guard, I was too slow to play guard. Crowd turned on me, booing me, spitting on me, accosting me in the street. Bradley, you overpaid bum. So that had a big impact. So you fast forward and I lose the presidential, or I have a narrow win in re-election to the Senate. And it was a direct correlation. I said, I've been here before, Yeah, it's the same feeling I had back when. And it gives you a certain maturity and perspective that allows you to not only survive, but move on and thrive in whatever else you're going to do.
What was more difficult for you, the end of your basketball career or the end of your political career?
Oh, the end of my basketball career was more abrupt. The end of my political career, it was abrupt in the sense that I didn't win the nomination for president, but you still go on in life. But in basketball, you can no longer go out and run up and down and take those shots and feel that team every day. And so it's a good question. Nobody's ever really asked me that question. And probably on an emotional level, the presidential thing was more abrupt. I'd been preparing to end my career with the Knicks, but having basketball behind you was something is irretrievable. And
right.
Political, there's always things around politics that you can do now or whenever.
As fans watch Rolling Along, and they learn more, all the details about your life and experiences in Princeton and Oxford and the Knicks, what do you want them to walk away with?
Well, what I hope people will walk away with is that in a time of division, as where we are now in the country, that there's really a common humanity that we all share. And we have to see that common humanity. And, you learn this from your parents, from a coach, from where. If you lose, congratulate the winner. That's true in politics. You act out of honor, not grievance. If your opponent falls, you help pick them up and move on. And to me, you have humility, and with humility and hard work, that you can have excellence. And excellence is how you take care of your family. And enough of us experiencing and pursuing that excellence well is what makes our country move forward. And so all of the politics sometimes is very brittle. And the deeper thing is life itself. And so this is, Rolling Along is more a human story than it is a hero story. I opened up to people because I think that that's what you need to do in order to have the credibility to get other people to open up. And my hope is that other people will tell their stories. And as more people tell their stories, we'll find such commonality, we'll strengthen our common humanity. And that's really what we're about as a country, democracy being the best expression of how to protect that.
And you sure do tell some emotional stories about your childhood and different relationships. And this is a wonderful story about life. And I love excellence. That is the perfect word to describe your life. Senator Bill Bradley, thank you so much.
Tina, it's
so
a real
wonderful
pleasure
to see
to be
you.
with you.
It's been an honor to talk to you, and thank you for joining us here